got through to NFTs, and I was in crypto a little bit beforehand, but I wasn't like in crypto. Obviously, we are all in crypto inherently through NFTs, and I found my way into the OpenSea blockchain or OpenSea marketplace, the Ethereum blockchain, after Dapper Labs showed a real incompetence for understanding supply and demand, and yeah, it's been fucking crazy ever since. I think my first mint was a bonsai. I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. Hit up the ass and gas for a stupid fucking tree, and it turned out to be awesome. It was a really great community at first. Showed me a lot about how being in the gas war works, and just how minting NFTs in general on this blockchain works. And so I remember that same sort of month. I also minted the summer land sale from Sandbox. This was last year. I minted Wicked Craniums, and I also minted Alien Boy. Also Cool Cat, not Cool Cat, sorry. Gutter Cat Gang. So I was part of like that era of NFTs. I had just missed the Bored Ape mint. So that's when I really started to understand what this shit is, how the market works, and yeah, from there it's been rock and roll history.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So before we like connect the dots into Web3 fully, right, to like apply your background and what you do and how you think about stuff and all that good stuff. Before you were in that space, right? You were in, as you said, you were at Verizon. You were kind of you understood solutions, but of course under sales and talking to normies, as you said. Like, how did you think about that? Like, first off, were the leads and conversations you were having cold? Were they warm? Like, what was your mindset for that? Like, you want to talk a little bit of background there?
Yeah, great question. So the way that our organization worked was pretty traditional to a sales organization today, where you'll have your SDR who will go and do the outbound, right? They're the ones doing the cold calling, prospecting, all that stuff. And then you'll have your account executive who will be the owner of the relationship, who gets wheeled in after an SDR is able to push an opportunity to that next phase, which is usually a phone call. And on that phone call is where I would come in, give a demo, and talk about value proposition of the solution we were selling. At the time, it was a streaming solution. Today, it's Metaverse HQ. Today, it's the value prop of our fucking incredible community. The stature, the sort of what our community has to offer, and how we can work together to essentially make a deal happen, right? And this is the same type of shit I was doing in Web2. So what we've done today is basically adapt those Web2 principles and bring them into Web3. I think a lot of like teams in Web3 just don't understand how important it is to be incredibly articulate with your ask, to be incredibly specific about your value proposition to the deal, and then obviously bringing in the same sort of process to the deal flow. What I mean is, you'd go to a lot of other communities. I don't know how they track their partnerships, but it's definitely not, on the level that we do, right? So all these things have in Web 2 that I've learned, especially when it comes to traditional sales, is directly applied to brokering deals for whitelist bots, to getting sponsors to sponsor our parties, to sponsor our media. Like, all this stuff is incredible. It's directly impactful and correlative in that way.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I think one of the blocks that probably exists for a good chunk of people who are not in sales, right? Like, that's not what they do, is they may feel like sales is kind of bothering somebody, right? Like you're trying to actively sell something, and therefore you're bothering them. So like, how do you go about it so that it doesn't feel like you're bothering them, but rather like you're adding value to them and they're going to be really excited about it? Like, how do you think about that?
That's a really great question. I would say that it really depends on the frame that you set. What I mean is, if you're coming into a project like Possessed, and you're coming in 2 weeks before mint, and they already have the community, they already have the marketing, they already have an over allocated whitelist. They're good to go. They don't need you to make the market for them. Whatever value you think you can add will not add any intrinsic value for them. Then you're gonna have a hard position. You're gonna have a hard time making a deal at that point in time. Um, it's in the same way that you know you go up to a celebrity, they're already rich and famous, right? What value do you have to offer them? You have to find the talent, you have to find the projects sort of early on. And luckily we found Possessed. The first time we had a conversation with Possessed was fucking February, right? So that was what, 4 months ago? And that was an establishment of a relationship. We talked with the two founders. They were in a goddamn like phone booth. They were like super enclosed. It was hilarious. And me, Meg, and Jacob were just shooting the shit with them. No ask at all, right? So that's the thing. You have to appear, and we are. You have to appear like, hey, you're ready to build and establish a relationship long term. You don't come for the ask right away, and in fact, you almost make it so that they come to you. I think that's the best way I can put that. And the way, just to elaborate on the last point further, right? How do you get them to come to you? Well, you have to be loud. You have to be, maybe they've already heard of you. Maybe, over that span of the 4 months, for instance, Possess has heard that we partner with Genie, that we partner with all these other amazing projects, that we had all these Twitter Spaces. They tuned into one or two or three or four of them before they were finally like comfortable to make a deal with us. And again, I think understanding the frame, understanding, hey, this isn't so much what we're selling, but like, how do we come together and collaborate in a way that's not just for whitelist spots? How do we do it creatively? We were hoping Possess would be down to do a Metaverse HQ trait, to do some sort of like one-on-one honorary, all that stuff. Unfortunately, they just got way too big. But you'll see that a lot of the times when we collaborate, it's long term, and some of the stuff that a lot of the stuff that we talk about doing like down the road happens in these like preliminary conversations where it doesn't seem super salesy. We just talk about what's possible, and what can be down the road.
Yeah, so I think just to replay what I'm hearing you say too, right, is that yes, like this is for MBHQ and before it was for Verizon, whatever. But even from like an individual person's standpoint, right, like if they're going to be pretty clinical about it, right, like there's a funnel that exists, right, and the funnel has to start early on and just developing relationships with people, like much like we're doing in here naturally, right, with people within here, but even beyond here too, just getting to know people and then continuing with that funnel along the way. So like if one wanted to be like really scientific about it, probably, right, you'd have a spreadsheet or you'd have a CRM or something and make sure that you're connecting with people periodically on an ongoing basis, so that way when the right time exists to partner, you'd be ready, right? You wouldn't have this like huge ass gap that exists between like the initial conversation and when you think that there's a hook or something like that, right? And it sounds like you guys just do a really good job with that lately, of seeding the conversation early, identifying them early, making sure the communication's there, and by virtue of doing that, like figuring out ways that you can help, for lack of a better description. Is that right?
Dude, totally, bro. And I think with all of the added resources of now having more touch points with an engagement, right? So if we consider like allow list partners to be an engagement, having like a dedicated partnerships team, having a dedicated social media manager, these types of touch points really like show that we are incredibly like focused, we are attentive, and also I like to point out another thing too. It's the community. It's like the value proposition from our standpoint is, hey, you get exposure to like literally the most prolific, crazy NFT motherfuckers in the game, right? Like we've been here for almost a year, right? And no one else can say that. Like we were the first. And so I think when you just like lean on those value propositions and people start to really understand and put respect on what we're doing and what we have been doing, as a community, like that is a much like that's our main vocal point of value, and that is the one that seems to get the most interaction and engagement. But at the end of the day, too, we don't need anyone, right? In the same way that another partner or potential project like may really look at our value and understand it. Like we don't necessarily need anyone. We're degens. At the end of the day, we can find mints on our own. We can flip on our own. And like we have all always been on leaning on that frame of investment as opposed to like needing these alala spots. So the way I see it, these alala spots are just a cherry on top, a nice little reward. Um, but like for instance, like I all of my biggest plays, all my biggest flips, all my biggest like Ethereum stacking, degen like trades and mints, they happen independent of all these partners, and I think that allows us to not seem as thirsty and seem more genuine in the way that we want to collaborate.
Yeah, that's awesome. So let's have some fun with this a little bit and go throwback style, because obviously, like that's the position that we're in with MVHQ now, right? And that's because you and and Jacob and the team have worked really hard, of course, to get us in that position. But that's not where it probably started originally, right? Like where it started originally was we had MBHQ, we had our community, and you probably, saw an opportunity to collab with the team and build out the marketing and sales side of things. So like, how did that start, if you can remember back, right? In terms of like the first partner we were trying to get, for instance, right? And how you oriented that pitch and how did that like evolve over time basically? And how did you think about that?
Oh, that's a fucking great question. I think when I had wanted to do marketing for Metaverse HQ was around like early November, um, or even October, and I was still advising for Superlative Secret Society, my biggest bag ever, and also Multiplier. Um, and I finally realized, like, okay, Metaverse HQ, this is the one, right? Because again, we were like really just an experiment, right? When Jake founded and like really led the brigade to release keys and gate the Discord, like no one had done it at the time. But when it come October, November, different story. So we already had like 5 months under our belt, and I was like, okay, I feel really comfortable with where the trajectory of Metaverse HU could be, at least from like a branding, marketing standpoint. And I was like, fuck it, let me take the reins there. I really didn't know what I was signing up for, and I was really just like slowly offboarding Jacob Meyer, um, who is now obviously like he's been my marketing lead for the past 6 months. He called me, I think it was the day before Thanksgiving, and was like, "I will fucking do whatever it takes. Just like put me on. I'll do this. I could do this. I could do this." He was like, "I could be your intern." And at the time, we didn't really have, we hadn't had our second round of mod applications. We hadn't really had anyone, right? I was the last. I was the last one in, and so was JJ. So that's when we both, we're like, all right, fine, fuck it, like, let's do it. Cool Cats was the first Twitter Spaces that we ever hosted. I figured we'll start with Twitter Spaces. We'll start like getting a good rep in the space for hosting like some really awesome blue chip projects, and then also the upcoming ones. So Cool Cats, I had Jacob. I remember I had him take some notes on Cool Cats, and he drummed up like this like 3-page banger to prep us for Cool Cats. None of which I read, by the way. I just I just told him to do it and see what how he'd respond, and they were really fucking great. And so I came into the Cool Cats Twitter Spaces, and on that Spaces, Bex, she makes the announcement that Metaverse HQ is going to receive 100 and whitelist spots for cool pets, and I was like, wow, that's sick, because like I didn't even ask for it. I didn't even know I could ask for it. In fact, I didn't know what was really possible. I didn't know how we could leverage the brand in a way where we could get more of these spots, right? Because again, I would have asked for it if had I known, had I had foresight. But yeah, she gave them to us, and that was our first allow-list partnership, whitelist partnership was with Cool Cats for so many spots on Cool Pets, and that was a total fucking cook. And yeah, that really set off like this framework of, okay, we know we can get more whitelist spots. So Jacob and I just started reaching out to different projects that seem pretty hype. I know a lot of us like Putin, System 32 now. Uh, he had an awesome list, so we were just gunning for the list. People would give us like recommendations on who to gun for, and we would just use the Metaverse HQ Twitter account to slide in through the DMs. Incredibly inefficient, right? And around the time Mom joined the team too, so in January, February, we started to take more of these meetings. We started to get more whitelist spots, and we started to build out our team more. Right, we had more reps, partnerships. We had a lot of people come through our doors in the partnerships team to help us like source these deals, to help us source these opportunities. So we're not sliding in DMs anymore. That part was taken care of. We would still take every single one of the meetings, and so we just had exposure to a lot of what was coming out because of all the meetings we were taking, because of all of the opportunities we were fielding. I think at any given week, we had about 10 to 15 meetings with like early stage upcoming like projects on the Ethereum blockchain, and yeah, and then it just started to accumulate, and around that time we had then onboarded Chrissy, and Chrissy is basically our head analyst and also just our partnerships manager. And what he did was he built the resources, built the back end. We worked together to iron out the process and turn our team into like an efficient, like just hunting sourcing machine. And yeah, and then from there we just like continued to bring in more contributors. I remember Silva was like a really great he was fucking awesome. Like he had such like great enthusiasm, and he wanted to join the partnerships team. And though it might not have necessarily like, been the best fit, we wanted to make sure that we were, you know, anyone in Metaverse HQ that wants to help Metaverse HQ and contribute in some way, like we should be able to like feel that passion to a place that fits best. And now Civil fucking slays on the content side. Poop's been working with him, and so this is just like a great. It's just been really great to expand on the contributors that we have. I think it's awesome to say that like everyone that contributes is a Metaverse HQ member, has either joined or joined recently, or has been an OG and wants to contribute. And yeah, we 6 months has been a long time since hosting the Twitter Spaces for Cool Cats, and thank God now I don't even have to host the Twitter Spaces anymore. But yeah, that's how we began, and this is where we are. Now we have a massive content team. Now when we have a partnership, I don't even have visibility into it anymore. That's all Jacob's and the partnerships team, and that also involves content team because partners want to be on Twitter Spaces, Discord AMAs. Someone needs to host them, and so it really fucking takes a village to make a single partnership happen.
Yeah. That's a really, really good rundown and throwback there. So thanks for giving the full context, even the stuff that's funny and otherwise. I think the one place, by the way, that you're not giving yourself enough credit, even though you didn't maybe you didn't see every angle about like the 100 whitelist, let's say, is I mean you did set up MVHQ in a way such that there was a lot of value, right? Like a community of people, there was external spaces that existed, and therefore these projects that want to mint out their projects and get awareness and get excitement, right? Like we had a really good hook at that point. So it's like, even though you didn't explicitly want to go for, the 100 whitelist slots, let's say, of Cool Pets, it was kind of set up that way, right? To some extent that we were just like a perfect ground for that, which is you guys doing that. There's no doubt about that. So, with that in mind, right? So like it started off in that direction. And then over time, like you said, got 10 opportunities a week, other opportunities beyond that. We didn't need them necessarily as much anymore, et cetera. Like, how do you find the Web3 space to be different from a sales perspective versus the Web2 space? Now, obviously, it's like not apples to apples since like Verizon is, a huge entity, right? So it's slightly different. But just in general, like, how do you find the Web3 space versus the Web2 space as it relates to sales and partnerships and things like that?
I think that because Web3, everyone is so like anonymous and undoxed, and I came into the space doxed accidentally because I didn't fucking know. Like everyone was like being undoxed, you know what I'm saying? So I was like, all right, fuck it, I'll just roll the punches. I think that the biggest because Web2 is so fucking Web2 in the way where like you have to be on LinkedIn. You have to like be like incredibly professional. You can get a lot away with not being so incredibly professional Web3, and that's not even a deal breaker, right? So not turning on your face cam, not even like having like an appropriate name, like not to call people out, but like I'm seeing partnerships with people on other teams. Like if your name's fucking inappropriate, like it really doesn't even matter. Um, my point being, any small increment or any small like Web two sort of thing in sales that you do in Web three, like increment it highly benefits the opportunity, the deal, the engagement. And what I mean by that is, hey, dox yourself, right? Show the other team, hey, here's like my LinkedIn, here's my name, it's Mitch Loxamana. Like you can, if you want to hunt me, you can find me. Fuck it. Like I've got nothing to hide. Or even if I did, like you know, I'm I'm willing to put accountability to this deal, right? So just even like having your just first last name, which you would think is like such a normal thing in Web three, that already is a big boost of confidence to a deal. Putting on your video, right, face cam, putting face to it, you'd be surprised how many partners are like they say something about that, like, oh my god, like I put my camera on, but I look like shit right now, and it's like, you know, it's all good, it's okay, but those little like human touches really add a nice positive like touch to every opportunity that we have in purview, and yeah, it's just you wouldn't think that it really would coming from Web two, but at the end of the day, because in Web three everyone's like siloed and anonymous, it actually the simple normal things actually enhance an opportunity.
That's a good. That's a really good thing to call out, and like a obviously a meaty question that I think is interesting. So I'm happy you called this out. Maybe let's just like talk about this a little bit. Maybe even debate about it to some extent. But like I agree with everything you're saying. I mean, for me, one of the biggest frustrations I have is undocs dev teams and therefore like the lack of accountability that exists sometimes, right? That's a challenge. There's no doubt about it. But even though everything that you're saying is correct, or I think is correct, do you think we're going to get there? Like, are we going to get to a world where it's not usernames anymore and people actually more proactively docs and video and all that good stuff? Like, what do you think is going to happen?
I think naturally, and this is just my take, I think naturally, especially after last week, people will FOMO in to like, get in on the action, because like we're gonna have a lot more like events. We're gonna have a lot more parties. It's gonna be a lot more global. Perhaps we have a fucking home base and Metaverse HQ in physical form. These are a lot of the idea, like content. Up the like. There's so many different ways in which our community can engage, and a lot of that is really enhanced in person. And I've been saying this since really December, when me and Meg had finally met in Art Basel, and Jake too. And then, we ended up in December, the whole month of December, me and Meg DJing at the Verizon offices full time while no one was there. And also fucking Yuri flying from South Korea to join us. So it was us three DJing in real life. Like I knew that what we do, what we love, doing this in person, trading in person, it was like one of the biggest thrills of all time, and it was so fucking addicting. And I love it because you just get better, you stay sharp, and that like I feel like created a lot of FOMO for when I went to the West Coast in January. A lot of people wanted to meet up. Jacob Meyer flew out, like Katarina, I bumped into her at a coffee shop, and then she started chilling with us and DJing with us, and so like we got more and more people to DJ in real life. Jake felt FOMO, so he flew all the way to stay with us at the Lowe's in Santa Monica, and like, we were all just like doing this together. And I think that all these events after NFTLA and that we had at the Tommy Hotel, when I was meeting more and more new people that came out, they said it was the first event, and then at NFTMIC, where like it was a lot of people's first event. I think that naturally, maybe you're not doxing outward to the NFT community, but you're like doxing to MVHQ. You're doxing to people that are part of like, to members, and like that doesn't need to be a big fucking show of a thing. It's just like, we're human beings at the end of the day, and it's like that's this like in real life these in real life experiences, they're only going to continue, and I think more and more people will like want to there will be more people um like experiencing the in real life stuff than like sitting on the sidelines at home, I think eventually.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with what you're saying, and I have two responses to that. First off, shout out to both Ral and to Yuri as well. Right, we're both from South Korea, and that's probably not going to be the first location of the IRL MBHQ IRL experience. And yet they're in every single conference consistently. I mean, they're really, 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 really awesome. So, and the other comment is like when, I mean, you've certainly seen it, right, with like setting up the parties with the team in New York this past week, in Los Angeles, in New York before that, and you just see like everybody's face, the look on their face when they're at the in-person party and they discover who somebody is based on their username, and it's like peak excitement, right? Like almost more peak excitement than like an amazing flip. So like I definitely agree with what you're saying, and clearly everybody really values that, and it's going to have to get there in some way or another. So it'll be interesting to see if that then translates to like people putting names on, in Discord or whatever, community forum is used, or if it still says his usernames, or how that happens. But okay, so touching on sales and relationships and all that good stuff. Like one of the other benefits, obviously, we talked about the benefits from like a partnership standpoint, a relationship standpoint, things like that. But one of the other benefits, of course, is alpha, right? Is trading alpha and knowledge and information and sounding boards and things like that. How did you think about that, or how have you thought about that in the past? Like, do you tend to prefer groups as it relates to that? Do you prefer one-on-one conversations for specific topics? Do you have certain people who you have as like trusted people for certain categories or things like that? Like, how have you thought about that as it pertains to like relationships for the sake of like information sharing and trading alpha and things like that?
Oh my god, yeah, that's another good fucking question. So there's like a there's a really interesting element to what we're doing here in Metaverse HQ, because anyone can essentially join just to shill. Anyone can buy a pass just to, listen in, see what we're doing, and perhaps like take it and go and try to replicate the same thing, and and not just want to like be like a member and just kick it and learn and all that shit, right? So, and I'd hope that everyone that has exposure to what we're doing is learning, taking it, and perhaps doing it within the doing it in a way that they think adds injects their own creativity. So that to me is like a genuine approach, whereas like you don't really know who is you don't really know like kind of information, or even like who you give what to will have like a negative impact for you down the road. And that's why it's so hard to like getting front ran is a real like issue. It's a real challenge in a way, where if you do something awesome, or if you have like really awesome tidbit of information, you share it, somehow everyone already like found out about it, right? But the whole point is like we're an alpha community in a way. Well, we share alpha, but we also share education. We share information in real time. Like we do a lot of things together where, especially on our voice chat, like the other side was a great example where we're all helping each other out in real time. And like as far as like what I might consider alpha, alpha, or what I might not consider alpha, someone else might, right? So for instance, we've been meeting with Binance. We're having conversations with Binance. We had a lunch with them, and we had a follow up meeting that was fucking awesome. We had to sign an NDA, and that was yesterday, right? What is that? If sharing that information with the community, it's both something that we want to, and also a challenge, because if we let the cat out of the bag sooner than later, maybe someone else that's in a similar position will take that information, decipher it, and go and front run us, which way. And maybe we lose a deal, or maybe we lose an opportunity because we couldn't keep our mouth shut. And as far as like who receives what information, especially within staff, we're not telling everyone everything, because keep making sure that everyone has scope of work and also scope of information is super fucking important. And especially if like you don't need to hear something, or it's not relevant to, or will make an impact at all to what your like scope of like work is, then like you won't hear about it. um I think that when it comes to actually communicating like the the details to like our community, when something is super super solid, then we get to go and actually announce that, and that's when it's finally ready, right? Like we've been talking with Ral, and DGen and his tool DGen Man. We've been talking for like a month and a half now. We've had many conversations around, how are we going to keep this exclusive for Metaverse HQ, and like, what can we do to help, and how we can come together to like finalize a partnership. And then once we announced it and announced this tool, now I've got like so many people sliding my DMs from other communities going, "Hey, we love DGen Mint. We want to partner with them. Can you put us in touch?" And thank God, thankfully, Ral and Metaverse HQ and DGen Mint came to an understanding where DGen Mint is going to be privately closed just to Metaverse HQ, only our community, right? So only we get the advantage of using it. And had that alpha leaked like prior, had his tool gotten in the hands of like all these other communities prior, dude, there's no way we would have been able to land that, right? Because there was just too much demand. And thank God Raoul's the fucking boy. And we've been like, working on a not just a professional relationship, but also like just an awesome friendship in real life. We were able to come together on that. But that's just like a great example of like alpha. There's so much I want to share. At the same time, if I share it, I know we'll get front run. So these things just need to actualize. And when we are able to announce it to the community, like that is when it's like fully solid. And just know that was after months of, or a lot of time, a lot of investment in not just the relationship, but also the value proposition. And I think Blur falls within the same category. I think Habbo falls within the same category. And these are relationships that we've nurtured over time. And if it got out any sooner, maybe it wouldn't have happened in this really awesome way where we have exclusive with DJ Mint, and now Blur is like going to be an absolute fucking total cook. Hopefully the next looks rare, but for everyone, right? For everyone. So yeah, it's a really good question, and there's no easy answer, but just know that like the alpha, it's not just for staff. Like all these meetings, all this information, we have very concise pipelines of information where everyone's on a need no basis. And as far as like who controls that scope, that's me, Poop, and Jake.
Yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, that makes complete sense. So we have a question. I do see the question in here, and we're gonna get to forecasting the future a little bit, which we'll have some fun with in a second. But before we get there, I'm just curious, look, it's been like a whirlwind, right? In a year and change at this point, or a year at this point, right? So with everything that you just said in terms of like, what the initial approach was, how you evolved, like the pitch as it related to MVHQ, how it's evolved over time, all that good stuff. And in your background too, like how have your personal goals changed as it relates to having all these conversations with project founders, tool founders? Like how has your mindset and goals changed at this point for yourself?
I think that having exposure to all of these players in the space, DGens in the space, like big companies now, and after we've sort of been ironing out what it is we're providing, I at the end of the day, there are like ways in which my brain is thinking bigger. Like like I'm mentioning to you, like it would be sick to have like a Metaverse HQ in real life headquarters, right? Where members can come and we'll have like a fucking awesome trading floor, and like we can create content around it, whatever the case might be. We can showcase like the HQ in real life. Like it'd be awesome to have experiences all around the world globally and sort of take what we did in New York and expand on that. It'd be fucking crazy to like continue to have mints like the other side and have the community just come together, and all like the mods, admins, and all the MVPs, everyone that's like just been an OG since day one, just like lean on each other on Discord, our fucking bread and butter. A lot of those like grander visions haven't those like the grander visions have sort of like materialized in that way. At the end of the day, I am still to be incredibly competitive in the space. You have to shoot your shot, and you have to fucking be like with like a degen. Like we came up as degens. We came up not making our money off of fucking our influence and using like how influencers, and no diss if you have more than 10K followers, I don't give a fuck. But like, you know, there's that way of making money and like taking ETH from your followers, and then there is, you know, just being fucking sharp and knowing your investment frame in the NFT space and understanding this market, and no one can fucking take that away from you. No one. And I love that shit. I crave it all the time. And like, even no matter how many meetings I'm in, I'm always like having Moby up. I'm always like trying to understand what's happening in the market, what's about to happen, and staying as like grounded as possible in what brought us all together in the first place, in the fucking night crew like vibe of just being hungry and thirsty always, because there's always a play to be made somewhere in the NFT space. And I still do believe that. And obviously it's fucking true, right? We had a free mint yesterday that ripped to a point 0.4 floor. So I think we still have those I still have those grander visions, or like those grander visions are more materialized, but I still am leaning on my prowess as an NFT trader because I'm proud of that. All the ETH that I've made has been on massive conviction plays, and no one could take that away from me. And when I'm talking on panels and I'm like representing Metaverse HQ, like it's no bullshit. It's no fucking bullshit. And I think that's where we've sort of now evolved, because I've had enough conviction plays to have conviction in myself as a trader. And now moving into partnerships and establishing those more, we now have conviction as a massive player in the market itself, in the NFT, within the NFT communities like ourselves. And that's a really big, it's now like important to translate that community sense, obviously translate it outward, but also now move past that stage of being an alpha community and more so like a provider for the NFT community, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that makes complete sense, and that's a great layout that you gave. Thank you. Yeah, thanks a lot for laying it out like that. And I mean, actually, very well transitions into my next question, which is like, where do you see this going then in the next several years? Not MBHQ specifically, although you can of course talk to that to the extent you want to, but more specifically, we're at this point right now where you and Jacob and Jake and and the rest of the team, of course, have worked very hard to build up this reputation such that people are coming in, to MVHQ rather than us having to constantly sell, although, always a bit of that too. But then again, like you said earlier, we still have many undoxed people, and we're heading into, we're in a bear, bit of a bear right now, and heading into, bear economy, all that stuff. So there's going to be this period for the next, however long, where we're, just kind of building and evolving the space. So like, what do you think is going to happen in a couple of years? Is it going to be, a couple big OG players like MBHQ and whoever else stays around, and they're just going to have an immense amount of control and power in the space at that point? Or, are undoxed people going to lose all the weight at that point? Like, what's your prediction? What do you think happens in a couple of years?
I think that, I think to answer your question, I'll tell a little bit of a story. I think one of the most impactful things that happened last week, at least that I experienced, you know, was was actually seeing the new guard come in, and there are like we are a little bit older, Aslo, right? In the sense where we've had Web 2 experience and we're now in Web 3, and we might be thinking about migrating over fully, but or we still have a foot like, in both Web 2 and Web 3 in some way. Um, we had a hilarious encounter, and this was like it was interesting because I had not thought of it like this, but we went to a staff dinner at the Wolfgang Puck like steakhouse, and I was totally underdressed. I was dripped head to toe in Metaverse HQ swag from drop number two, and like a Supreme outerwear like jacket on. And I walk into this like steakhouse. I'm like one of the last staff members there. I'm pretty late, you know, in Filipino fashion, and I get there. Everyone's in business suit and ties. We're totally like don't fit in at all. I saw the rest of the table. Everyone's rocking MVHQ and like Bored Ape gear, whatever. Um, Sit down. We're just having a vibe, having a meal, and halfway in, like this like table of like really like young like men, you know, young kids, like 18 to 21, sit down behind us. And my brother is 19, right? So I have a little brother, Sharman, he's 19. We got into NFTs together, and from like a $30 Top Shot pack, he's now able to, you know, buy Zoogies and shit, right? So he's come a long way himself. And, you know, these kids were dressed like I was. They were like dripped in streetwear, rocking Champion, Converses, and I was like, okay, these guys look like DJs, right? Because they're fucking young. They're pulling up to this fancy ass steakhouse, and they look like DJs. And I just go and I like tap one on the shoulder, who actually I see in here right now in the office hours, and I ask him. I just start shooting the shit, and turns out they have their own alpha group. Turns out, you know, they're just meeting up in real life for the first time. And mind you, bro, these were literally like fucking 19, 18, 19, 20 year olds buying fancy steak dinners for themselves all together, like just degenning like in real life, and like enjoying the experience, enjoying the ride, enjoying the thrills of this fucking market. There's really nothing better than having a massive, massive rip, a massive flip. Because at the end of the day, like what we do best is, you know, we stack ETH, we make money, and we make good investments, and we have good exits. And I was just like, we were just like totally engaged with this table, and they were fucking awesome. They had nothing but like excited energy, and you could just tell like they thought the same way that we did, right? They're using the same tools that we're using, and they're so much younger than us. And I was like sort of, and I know we have young people in Metaverse HQ, but I was blown away. And I think that we don't think enough about the new guard, about the new people coming into the space, because this is what they look like. They look a lot like us, and they're not like, not all of them are looking for Web3 to be exit liquidity, or look to come in just to sell something. Like people are coming in to participate in the same way that we do, and we just always got to be sharper. We got to get better. We got to be smarter, and work more as a team, because and educate more, because like again, there are young people coming into the space, and you know my thought process is, how do we accommodate that energy? How do we accommodate that resourcefulness and tactfulness that they bring, in a way that's like, oh, moves space forward? Because I think in years time you'll see a lot more, there'll be a lot more young people than old people. And right now I think it's just like not to bag on us older people, but you know there will be a change in the guard. And you're already, I'm seeing it happen in real time, and I was just blown away. I think that was like a perfect sort of cap to the week. And yeah, I'm excited to see, you know, I'm excited to see more of the young people come in and just totally dominate.
Yeah, I agree with you. And like, I mean, to build on top of what you're saying, right? Like, because they're going to be so much like an increasing portion of the population, like, you know, like, I'll speak for myself, okay? I won't put you in this bucket, right, to save you. But I don't understand everything that they're doing and what they're into and all that good stuff. Therefore, like, you kind of need to understand that to be able to trade effectively or buy effectively, right? Because you're trying to buy assets that are in demand, right, to flip or to hold or whatever, you know, whatever your strategy is, right? So having those young people around, right, was, you know, if it was like, you know, brawlers or Vesti or whoever, right, and hear what their perspective is on things, where their heads are at, or the people around them is really really valuable to have around. And I love hearing from those folks. So um, so we got a couple of questions we're going to dip into real fast. One is, One is a really pertinent question from Jacob, which is, why won't you give Jacob more alpha? I don't know if you have to answer that or not. Be prepared
Hey,
for the backlash coming off this call.
Jacob
Um,
gets enough alpha.
but Board asks, he says, I love what you said about doxing really meaning something to partners in the Web3 space. But are there any downsides you've seen from being doxed? So, like, how do you think about that? Is the question.
That's yeah. I I watched a documentary called "Don't Fuck with Cats," and I should not have watched that fucking documentary because like now it's like been seeded in me just how ruthless people can be, or A, like what kind of sick fucks are out there, and B, how ruthless these sick fucks can be with like a little bit of information about you. So yeah, I'm always watching my back. I'm a lot more paranoid, especially after like big hits, big mints, big plays. I'm always thinking someone's behind me. I'm more careful for sure. I think there's there's more positives than negatives when being doxxed. I say that until I'm stuffed in the back of a fucking pickup van, or pickup truck. But right now, just being careful, being mindful, and letting everyone know. Um, a lot of the people like in real life, like my friends and family, know that like what's going on and what's happening, so we can all be very realistic about like what kind of security measures, or what kind of like liabilities we need to think about. And I think when it comes to like the liabilities that I have, brand liability is a big one because like now my name's just tied to everything, and so I that's just something I need to be mindful of.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. That makes complete sense. So I'm kind of hearing, security like everybody has in mind, but then also your reputation, of course, and people being aware around you, and those kinds of things. So before we wrap, just I want to give you a chance. Of course, we talked today about how you think about partnerships and sales, but I know, of course, you have like a way bigger picture in terms of the space and how you see it and all those good things. Any other final thoughts that would be useful for anybody listening today? And it could pertain to sales or partnerships, or it could just be from a wider standpoint. Anything else that you think would be useful that you want to share?
I think that I don't know. I think nothing that like there's nothing that I could share that is like different than what is already being said by everyone in Metaverse HQ. I think everyone here is so fucking like a lot of us here are so OG and we have so much context and we're like hilariously smarter than 99% of the market. Like I think and Jacob and Meg and everyone that's been on these meetings can attest. Um, like you'll have people pitch their fucking upcoming project and like what they plan to do and all the stuff and they have no context. They haven't been like you're gonna pitch like an NFT to like crowdfund your fucking like show that you want to create and animate and you have like three studios already ready like to go with it. All you need is like the NFT sale. It's like, all right, have you seen Sonar Cats? Have you fucking seen Glue Factory? Have you seen like do you have context into how these have performed traditionally, like historically? And they go, no, what are those? I'm like, you are just you don't know what the fuck you're talking about, and like no one does really. Like 90, I would say 98% of our meetings, um, people just don't know what they're talking about. They don't understand the value proposition. They don't have context. That's the thing. They don't have context, and we do. We've been in the space for a long time. A lot of us have. A lot of us OGs, Metaverse HQ. Everyone that remembers Night Crew, like that context, hilariously enough, to know that like Amber Victoria, Alphabet, maybe she she will rug you again, or like Night Kids, and Laz, like he never fucking mint the project he ever does, right? Or maybe like similar value proposition will actually fail because it didn't work the first time, right? Just having that context of like all these projects, hilariously enough, even my fucking pickle and wicked craniums and like alien boys and like fucking bonsais, this shit is valuable information. It's valuable. No one can take that away from us. No one, and there's a price for it. There's a price for it. And Web 2 is our exit liquidity. Also, like NFT traders that are not as sharp are also our exit liquidity, though sometimes we are our own like exit liquidity in a way. Like these, no one can take that away from us, and that context is so valuable. So like, I would urge everyone that's like an OG and has been in the space. Our context is a lot more valuable than you might realize, and like when you put an actual dollar figure behind it, it's a lot. Um, and then everyone that's coming in that's new, like be patient and also be communicative. A lot of us in Metaverse HQ, we've been here since like fucking like 2020, like early Top Shot days. Some have even been as far back as Crypto Kitties, which is a big fucking flex. And I think that when we come together as a community and start to fill those knowledge gaps and also understand, like we are 1%, we are like 1% of the 1%, right? Coming into NFT LA after leaving NFT NYC in November, and especially after this one, like if you talk with anyone outside of MVHQ, more often than not, you're talking to a normie in NFTs. There are normies in NFTs, and then there's Metaverse HQ and like a handful of others in other alpha groups that just understand this shit. And we have a lot to offer. Not just the Web3 space, but also Web2, who again I hilariously laugh. I really believe they are our exit liquidity.
Yeah, that makes sense. And there's a lot of like good things I take from that, right? I take one, so people just have that in mind in general, right? For trading purposes or for just general understanding. Like two, as it pertains to like the fact that the knowledge that we have and the experience that we have in here is valuable, right? So if somebody's looking to help a certain project or consult or whatever the heck they're trying to do, right? I mean, we have that knowledge and that power. But then also like the way to, I think, to improve that to some extent, which we've definitely seen in here, is like everybody's formed their, despite the fact that we discuss things and despite the fact that we have like similar knowledge and experiences, things like that, because of people's backgrounds, I feel like everybody has formed their own opinion or vision for like where they think things may go, or it may be like specific to a category that they know really well. So like continuing to have those conversations, even if it is, a little bit of a quieter time where bear is like invaluable, because you're going to get shaped by other people who know maybe other things better than you, other certain categories better than you, or certain functions better than you, or whatever it is, right? So yeah, that's a really good recap, man, and I think super useful to be able to frame for everybody. So I think that's a really good endpoint and perfect place to cap here. But Mitch, really appreciate you coming on. You really pulling back the curtain on the normal stories and funny and weird stories that we've had in terms of background, and really good conversation that we had today. So thanks again, man, for coming on. And as always, thanks everybody for listening. And we will have same time next week, I believe. We'll let you know if not, but same time next week we'll have Numbers Therapy 11. So thanks everyone.
Gang, thanks for having me, Aslo, and thanks everyone for tuning in and hear me vent and shoot the shit. It's been fun. Cheers.
All right. We will see everybody back in VC1. Thanks, everyone.
You.
Thanks, Mitch.
Thanks, guys. That was a